how we thought we'd do this, we'd sort of have a conversation between Charlotte and myself. Whether Charlotte will be able to remind me of the things I've forgotten to mention. But also I think it's important to get two viewpoints on something. Just one viewpoint only gives you a single view, and I think one of the things, aspects of City of Lights is its diversity. I was reflecting as I hobbled my way here today. I've got a bit of a bad back, so if passages of pain pass over my face, it's not the company, it's my lumbar region. So, can you hear me better?
That's right. Sorry to hustle you back.
Yeah. Oh,
that's good.
Thank you. There we are. The creaking of bones. I was reflecting on my way here. We've just had 21 years of City of Lights. We did our 21st parade this February, a few months later than we anticipated, but we did it nonetheless. If I go back to those 21 years ago, it was a time of great change in Truro, and it was that change that really triggered the reason why we did it, why we started City of Lights. And at its heart, it's an educational project. It's the time spent with those artists, in those schools, with those children. That's what is the beating pulse of City of Light. What you see on that night is the tip of the pyramid. You see the result. But actually it's about all the thinking and the doing and the making and the coming together beforehand that is the driver, and why we keep repeating it. 21 years ago, Truro was going through a lot of change. The Hall for Cornwall was being developed, the old town hall that we knew so well. There was a lot of mixed feeling about those changes. There was also a feeling in the town that actually who owned it anymore? You know, you just walked past rows and rows of shoe shops and multinationals and mortgage lenders, and where were the shops with the people in that I remember growing up in the town as a kid. My family moved just outside Truro in 1960, so almost 60 years now we've done here in Truro. We wanted to reflect upon that time of change and find a way of engaging the children who were growing up in the town at the time to feel what they felt about it and give them a voice. Now, I've been part of City Lights since the very beginning, but actually the genesis of the idea came from a wonderful woman called Hazel Burston, who was the curator of the Royal Cornwall Museum, and a wonderful woman. And together with Tim German, who was part of the team that was building the Hall for Cornwall at the time, and Knee High Theatre, who were practitioners of community arts, they brought a little sort of project together. And what we wanted to do was get the children to look at the town of Truro and just think about where they lived. And the children we worked with, it's a really interesting age group. And it's one I can vividly remember myself growing up in the town. They're sort of year 5 and 6, so they're 10 or 11. So when they go into town on a Saturday, say with their parents or who's looking after them, they're giving a bit of time off. You know, you don't have to follow your parents around all the time around Marks and Spencer. Well, it wasn't Marks and Spencer then, was it? That was later. But they would start to explore where they live. Maybe they'd be walking from school from their home on their own. So they're getting an idea of where they lived. And that's something that's remained all the time, that sense of empowering children at that age to think about where they live, and should they have a voice in the future about any changes or alterations to it? Should they feel empowered? Should they feel that this is their place? So that was sort of the thinking that was behind this. And what we did, we went into the schools, a group of about half a dozen artists or so, under the auspices of Knee High Theatre's Community Arts, and using the very simplest of materials, literally paper, sticks and glue, we built models of the buildings. And they were then exhibited and the artists also then made models. They were commissioned to make a model of an aspect of the architecture of Truro and the town hall and all those spaces. And they were exhibited in the what was the chapel extension gallery at that time, because again that was another change. That was a new exhibition space that the Royal Cornwall Museum had. So I think we were the second exhibition in there, and one of those nights of late night shopping, we opened the doors and we carried the lanterns that we'd made in that exhibition out into the town, and we met the children, and we literally just wandered through late night shopping, through the streets of Truro, past all the stalls, deciding where we went, up and down, round and about. Came back, we thought, well, that was fun, let's do that again. And we've done that now for 21 years, but the reason we do it is revisited each year. We wanted to make a new tradition for Truro, but traditions aren't things that just should be thought and followed mindlessly. They should be studied and considered and balanced and valued and checked against time and place. So it has rolled forward. So that's where it comes from. And in many ways, it's not that different now. It is still a group of artists going into schools. It is a group of artists that are commissioned to make a sculpture about a story. It's about giving Truro back to the people who feel it is where they live, where it's their home. It's about giving children a sense of place. It's about acknowledging change, that change does happen, and you've got to think about that. It's about things that are ephemeral, because you make these things very quickly, they appear for the night and then they're gone. And the next year we make the whole thing again. So it's a sense of storytelling and drama. It's a celebration of winter. It's many, many things. And I think that it being many things is also very important to it. It is survived by being a platform. It's gone through many, many different ownerships, steering groups, board members. It's become a loose affiliation into a community interest company. So it's formalised and grown up. I think it has its own bank account now. But what it's always been wide open to anyone who would like to come and take part and feel that it would be advantageous for them to do so. So whether that's the police, who would like people, the children of the town, to actually respect where they live and not kick 6 sorts of brick dust out of the buildings and the street furniture. It's about businesses thinking, actually, this is a good place to be in business. It's creative, it's different, it's got a backlog of stories and history and things to celebrate. It's a place that's a good place to be in amongst its community. It's what am I going to say next, Charlotte? I've just stalled.
Celebration.
It's a celebration, yeah. It's a celebration. It's a celebration. But it is like all sorts of simple things that have gone on for a while. It's become increasingly complicated. Partly because we make it so. One of the things that we do is we take a shed, a space, a borrowed area in Truro. We put a pile of materials in there, literally a mountain of materials. We take a photograph of that each year. Big pile of withies, about 30 bundles of withies, about 20 gallons of glue, I can't remember, 40 packs of tissue paper, several hundred feet of cabling, big heap. And at the end of that, we've got 14, 15 wonderful big sculptural procession items that will walk out into the street. Some of them remain in the Lander Gallery, or the Atrium Gallery now. But what's become more difficult is the environment to do that within. And that's us acknowledging that things change. We have to change as things change. The circumstances in which you do things change. So that's sort of a current theme for us. And identity and communities need to think about who they are in amongst those changes as well. So participants drop in and drop out. Some people are sometimes feeling community-minded, sometimes they're not. It comes around in cycles. We've had very good relationships with education establishments, and then they might feel, actually, we don't want to be doing that anymore. We're going to be doing something else. That's fine. You flow with those things. But about being that open platform, I think that's really important. And we came to a bit of a jolt about 18 months ago, where we looked at what we were trying to do, and the circumstances that we were able doing it within, and the resources that we had to do it with, and we thought, we can't do this. This is just too impossible. So you have an organisation that, on one side, is this wonderful little educational project that's really simple. It's money in, it's money out, absolutely balances. On the other hand, you've got a spectacle now that's gone from being that little tour around late night shopping to an estimated audience of around 30,000 people, which makes it one of the largest wintertime spectacles outside London. Certainly in the southwest, there are very few things in one single event that that can provide that sort of spectacle at that sort of level as well. And what we did, we thought, well, actually, it's too financially risky for us personally as a group to be able to take this out onto the streets, because we have to look at the safeguarding of 30,000 people, and the only way we can pay for that is for them to put money into a bucket. And out of that 30,000 people, we collected...
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
No,
I think about £1,200, I think.
It was something like 20p, equivalent of 20p per person.
20p per person. And that's not sustainable. You know, we personally carried the weight of that on our shoulders. So we thought, actually, we're not going to do that this year. We're going to have a break from it. We're going to confound expectations, because I think it's expecting the unexpected is part of what we do. No one knows what's going to be on the street until it appears. It's always a surprise. Quite often it's a surprise to us as well. One of the things about putting a group of artists in a big shed with a load of materials is that they'll start swapping ideas. They'll think, do you know, I've been thinking about this. What if we did? So we gathered all that together, all the things we would like to do, and we thought we're going to take those ideas and we're going to put them in a place where actually the crowd can come to us rather than we take it to the crowd, so we're not responsible for the crowd. So we looked at an idea of doing it in Victoria Gardens. At which point, I think the proverbial hit the fan with the reaction that we then received. Now, we've gone from a time when a mobile phone was an unheard of novelty to the fact that we actually now walk our parade past a battery of social media devices. Social media descended upon us with its full fury, denying Truro its spectacle. But on the other hand, we weren't able to provide that spectacle without that community coming on board. So we had been quietly over a few years, just getting on with it really. A relatively small management group with quite a good product, efficiently run, but now confronted with the fact that actually what we were receiving from the community was a very different voice, a really, really strong sense of ownership. And that's when you realise actually you've made something that's come out of your own hands. And that's where we are at the moment. We're just wondering what City of Lights is, what the Truro people think about it, what they would like to see it happen with it. So it's a really interesting point for us to be back after those times of years, after that time of change 21 years ago, to be at this point of change and new directions. And we're not quite clear. So it's really lovely for us to be here as part of the group that produced this, amongst the people who, I recognise a few faces here, but there's many that I don't. Just to extend its reach further and to hear some of those voices about, is it something that's significant? Is it worth doing? Does it bring a sense of community together? What other things could be wrapped into it? It's open to conversations. What are the conversations that we could be having that would be meaning someone could be sitting here in 21 years' time saying, actually, we have managed to continue to make Truro a place like no other in the country for one night for its people. And I think if we can still hit that benchmark, it's still worth it. That's what I think. But I'd be really interested to hear what you think about it.
I think when we had a conversation last night, and the savouring moment for me was when Tony said, I am so passionate about this happening in Truro, but if it was in Weymouth, Plymouth, Helston, it wouldn't be the same thing, and I think that's what's so important. And I think it's that passion that we need to hold on to. And for me, that's just so important because it's that, you know, it's a beautiful event, it's fantastic, it is a spectacle, but it's because of the passion that it ignites in creatives, members of the community, performers, businesses, that it continues to happen. Because there are some very dark moments when it's cold in the shed and they're trying to make lanterns, but it's because people passionately care about the event and it ignites that sense of belonging. And I mean, you cannot ignore the fact that that first moment that you see the lantern parade process down Lemon Street, that incredible feeling. I mean, for me, I wish I could bottle that up and give it to some people, because it's just, the hairs stand on end, and you feel a lump in your throat, and that is the one moment. I mean, it's better than Christmas for me. It's that moment, and you just think, wow, this is happening for me. It's happening in my home city where I grew up all my life. I was born here, and I'm so proud of what we have done. And it's just beautiful. And it happens, it's 1 hour, and it passes, and that moment keeps us going throughout the year until it happens again 1 year later.
I think
that's so important.
I think it's that idea of moment is really important. I mean, you know, my motivation for doing it is mixed and entirely selfish. I really like making things, and I get a shed with some material to do it in, and that's great for me. But I also wanted Truro to be a town that I wanted my children to grow up in. And I wanted them to feel that they had access to its history, its past, its future, that they would feel that they had a voice in that there were no doors that were closed to them in terms of where they could reach and feel part of. And they've all taken part in it. And they've all got that memory. They've all got that memory of that special night where they walked into Truro with all the other children of their age group, all gathered together. That's remarkable. That doesn't happen very much. But also something they've created with their bare hands, out of nothing, out of an idea, and that's been genuinely creative. You know, we live a long way from a lot of natural resources and a lot of bigger economies. The one thing we can do here is be clever with what we've got. That's the Cornish way, and that's something I think, you know, we can embed in children, and you can do that by experience. You don't have to be you know, you don't have to write it out in big letters and tattoo it on their foreheads and make them repeat it before they go to bed. They just need that memory, and I think that's what we've sort of done. Every now and then, sort of, you hit upon little touchstones and you think you've done the right thing. I remember one year I met a gentleman, and he lived in Probus. He hadn't been into Truro for 15 years because it was too busy. Didn't like it. But he'd come in to see his granddaughter. And I thought, well, thank you. All that work, that was worth it for that. There used to be a little old lady, the houses by the law court, she used to sit there on a chair outside, and she had a big jam jar, and she'd have collected 10p's during the course of the year, and she used to empty that jam jar into our bucket as we went past. And that was her taking part, being part of it, that memory. That's what I've got. Little small instances. So amongst that, we were just doing some numbers actually, and it's about 700 school children each year. So that's 14,500 participants, school children, who've had that experience in Truro. The parade's about 1,000 people, so that's 21,000 people. So, you know, cumulatively, we've had an effect. One of the effects I have been accused of is of filling more garden sheds in Truro with unwanted lanterns than anyone else, which I suppose has got a bad legacy. We're going to say something about some of the sectors that we work with, some of the businesses, Charlotte. We were talking about Stormfront, weren't we?
So yes, I realise we're short on time now, but one of my jobs is to look at the sponsorship and to look at community partners. So 2 years ago, we worked with Damien Richards at Truro City Council, and we actually worked with the newly formed Malabar community, was it the New Beginnings
Yeah, that's right.
MBCA, and they worked with Tony, and they made their own lantern and they paraded that through the streets. Last year we worked with Pen Andre, so brilliant. So we're starting to engage communities living kind of on the edge of Truro, bringing them into town and giving them something to work towards. We also have been working with the BID and looking at working with both local and national businesses to find opportunities where businesses feel that they can invest in something that has impact in the city and gives them significant coverage with 30,000 people coming to the city. Those partnerships have been invaluable, number one, because they help to finance the event, but number two, it's really important to have that connection. So, for example, Andy, who's the manager at Stormfront, he remembers growing up in the area, watching the parade, and because of that genuine interest, the same as Richard at Tesco's as well, because they have that genuine interest and that connection with Truro, they then continue it, and they love the fact that they can, one day they can bring their children in and they can enjoy it, and they kind of reach the next level and a new way of enjoying it, but then they can use their business to support the event. And I know Andy's very keen to ensure that the lantern goes into a school later on this year as well. So, it doesn't stop with the children. It continues through the generations, through the family, and on many levels. And it's a great opportunity. And then one final one is working with One Vision this year at Cornwall Council. So we work with a number of groups, including the Wild Group, Young Mums. We worked with Young People Cornwall. A number of groups who would otherwise be excluded from events. And just that moment where they can take part, it can only raise self-esteem, gives them an amazing opportunity to be part of something, and that sense of belonging as well.
I think actually that was a genuinely moving experience this year for us to work with some of those excluded groups, people who don't feel they're valued by the world at all, and to give them a platform to come together to be part of something. And they were shining at the end of that day. Actually, their sense of value and worth, the fact that they'd walked out in front of their community with something they'd made, which told a story, one story for them about what a home is for them. So that was one of the good things we did, I think.
Right, I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you there.
Of course.
Strict instructions that it's timing. I'm sure we've all got many things we want to say, not least how wonderful it all is, but we're going to say that after we've had the next speaker, and then we'll come back to you again for question and answer.
No problem.
So